من ایرانم و تو عراقی، چه فراقی چه فراقی. بگیر از دلم یه سراغی، چه فراقی چه فراقی. دوری و دوستی سرم نمیشه و هیچ کجا واسم حرم نمیشه و از تو دورم باورم نمیشه و دارم میمیرم. کربلا واسم ضروریه حسین، اربعین اوزام چجوریه حسین، کار من امسال صبوریه حسین، دارم میمیرم. من ایرانم و تو عراقی، چه فراقی چه فراقی. جوونیم فدا سر ساقی، چه فراقی چه فراقی. آرزوم راهی مشایشم، کربلاییشم باهات همسایشم. هر جمع سرخه بشه آسایشم، آروم جونم. این روزا عطر عقاقیم میخوام، تلخی چای عرابیم میخوام، گریه تو صحنه ساقیم میخوام، آروم جونم دارم. من ایرانم و تو عراقی، چه فراقی چه فراقی. بگیر از دلم یه سراغی، چه فراقی چه فراقی. دوری و دوستی سرم نمیشه و هیچ کجا واسم حرم نمیشه و از تو دورم باورم نمیشه و دارم میمیرم. کربلا واسم ضروریه حسین، اربعین اوزام چجوریه حسین، کار من امسال صبوریه حسین، دارم میمیرم، آروم جونم. من ایرانم و تو عراقی، چه فراقی چه فراقی. من هرم لازمم دلم تنگم، روزگارم ببین به هم خورده. تو عراقی و منم ایرانم، سرنوشتیم چنین رقم خورده. چه فراقی چه فراقی بگیر از دلم یه سراغی چه فراقی چه فراقی دوری و دوستی سرم نمیشه و هیچ کجا واسم حرم نمیشه و از تو دورم باورم نمیشه و دارم میمیرم کربلا واسم ضروری حسین اربعین اوزام چجوری حسین کار من امسال صبوری حسین دارم میمیرم من ایرانم و تو عراقی چه فراقی چه فراقی جوونیم فدا سر ساقی چه فراقی چه فراقی آرزوم رایی مشایشم کربلاییشم باد همسایشم هر جمع سرخه بشه آسایشم آروم جونم این روزا عطر عقاقیم میخوام تلخی چای عراقیم میخوام گریه تو صحنه ساقیم میخوام آروم جونم دارم من ایرانم و تو عراقی چه فراقی چه فراقی بگیر از دلم یه سراغی چه فراقی چه فراقی دوری و دوستی سرم نمیشه و هیچ کجا واسم حرم نمیشه و از تو دورم باورم نمیشه و دارم میمیرم کربلا بازم ضروری حسین اربعین اوزام چجوری حسین کار من امسال صبوری حسین دارم میمیرم آروم جونم من ایرانم و تو عراقی چه فراقی چه فراقی من هرم لازمم دلم تنگم روزگارم ببین به هم خورده فراقی و منم ایرانم سرنوشتیم چنین رقم خورده
Maria, I'd like to welcome you to an amazing panel that we have today by McPean Talks. It's called A Lasting Legacy, Drawing Inspiration from the Life and Death of Lady Zainab
Sister Maria, can you hear me?
Alayhi salam. Before we start, I would like to call upon Brother Muhammad for
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قد أفلح المؤمنون الذين هم في صلاتهم خاشعون والذين هم عن اللغو معرضون والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين. فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون والذين هم على صلواتهم يحافظون أولئك هم الوارثون الذين يرثون الفردوس هم فيها خالدون. ولقد خلقنا الإنسان من سلالة من طين ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين ثم خلقنا النطفة علقة فخلقنا العلقة مضغة فخلقنا المضغة عظاما فكسونا العظام لحما ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر فتبارك الله أحسن الخالقين. ثم إنكم بعد ذلك لميتون ثم إنكم يوم القيامة تبعثون. ولقد خلقنا فوقكم 7 طرائق وما كنا عن الخلق غافلين. وأنزلنا من السماء ماء بقدر فأسكناه في الأرض وإنا على ذهاب به لقادرون فأنشأنا لكم به جنات من نخيل وأعناب لكم فيها فواكه كثيرة ومنها تأكلون وشجرة تخرج من طور سيناء تنبت بالدهن وصبغ للآكلين وإن لكم في الأنعام لعبرة نسقيكم مما في بطونها ولكم فيها منافع كثيرة ومنها تأكلون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
So before I start and talk about the amazing panel that we have, I just want to go over. So before I start and talk about the amazing panel that we have, I just want to quickly go over about Mateen Talks and why we decided to have this program as it is. As Arbaeen is approaching, we thought it would be really relevant to have this amazing program with two amazing speakers. So I just want to tell you a little bit about Mateen Talks, what kind of platform it is. So Mateen Talks is a platform that gives everyone, in particular youth and students, the opportunity to present their creativity and ideas and address pertinent issues in our society. This Mateen Talks forum is a great opportunity to reach out to a broad audience and it's done in a 12-minute TED Talk style format. I've actually attended MSA-PSG last year, and I, for the first time, saw Mateen Talks, and it was just not only so entertaining, but it is just so informative to see our youth present their ideas in this creative way by adhering to the principles of Islam. So now I would like to go on. I would start the discussion as you all are waiting for. So we have two exceptional speakers. The first speaker is my good friend. Her name is Nausheen Yusuf Sadiq. She obtained her master's from Boston University in Religious Studies. Her thesis topic was on Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam's legacy and the model of martyrdom in Shia Islam. She is published in I Speak for Myself, American Women on Being Muslim. She was featured in iCover, A Day in the Life of American Muslim Covered Girl, and in various other academic and religious works. She currently resides in New Jersey with her 3 children and her husband. So I would like to now divert your attention to Nausheen. And the topic of her speech today is the lessons from the life and death of Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Can you guys hear me? I'll take that as a yes. If you can't hear me, please stop me. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. I am very honored and humbled to be asked to speak here today on a topic that is very close to my heart. As Maria mentioned, excuse me, I completed my master's degree many years ago on a topic, on Sayyida Zainab and the paradigm of martyrdom in Shia Islam. I ultimately was looking for topics related to Sayyida Zainab because of the lack of information about her in mainstream academia. Students of Islamic studies will tell you that when they are giving an assignment, the first place that they look to start their research is in the Encyclopedia of Islam. Now, when I was in school, which was over a decade ago, so perhaps things have changed by now, but back then, there wasn't even an entry in the Encyclopedia of Islam for Zainab Bint Ali. And a lot of times, if you ask a Muslim who is a non-Jafri Shia about the Prophet's family, they may not know the names of the Holy Ahl Bayt. And rarely do I hear them know who Sayyida Zainab was. But in my opinion, and I'm sure in yours, Muslims are eternally indebted to Sayyida Zainab. And it's truly because of her that we have the correct message of Islam still intact. So my interests in general are on women in the Abrahamic traditions, which often get a bad reputation for being very male-centric because we have all male prophets and imams. But I would argue counter to this because even though certain men were appointed as prophets and certain men were appointed as imams, it doesn't mean that just any man can attain this very desired station. Any man watching today cannot just become an imam, just like any woman watching today cannot just become an imam. And also not to downplay the roles of some very important women figures that we have in our entire history of the Abrahamic traditions, from Asiya to Bibi Maryam to Bibi Fatima al-Zahra, and then of course Bibi Zainab. But the beautiful part of Sayyida Zainab's example is that we have a example that is accessible to all of us. Both men and women can use the example of Sayyida Zainab to learn how to love their imam and how to support their imam. She presents different modes of how to achieve this, and I came up with a couple terms on my own to explain like the differences that I'm going to talk about today. For one, her life was very similar to how you imagine an activist to be. So I'm going to separate a little bit of her example and say that she did some examples of social activism and some on spiritual activism. So in both types of these activist actions, it's important to take a holistic view on our religious practice, meaning that we have to actually involve our body in worship and in the fight for justice. Being a Muslim and being an activist doesn't just exist in our heart or in our mind. A lot of times you will find, especially these days, you'll find people asking, what's the point of certain rituals in religion, certain rules that we have, for example, prayer. They might say, well, if I wake up in the morning and I show gratitude to God, I'm thinking about God all the time. Why do I have to do the 5 daily prayers? Why is that not enough? Okay, well, maybe the same person will meditate throughout the day. So you can ask them, well, how do you meditate? Do you just like lounge on a couch? Are you eating a bag of chips and you're like meditating about like your place in the universe? No, that's not right. You have to find a comfortable room. People will tell you you have to find a quiet room. You have to sit with good posture. You have to be able to breathe deeply and slowly. You have to engage your whole body to meditate effectively. The ritual of meditation is important in order to be effective. So I would argue that the same concept applies when you do rituals in our faith. For example, the positions of prayer are representative of different stages in our being, like in sujud. It represents being raised from the earth to this temporal life, then down again for death, and then you're raised again on the day of judgment. So every time we do these actions, it's actually a chance for us to experience a change in our heart. And why is this important? So we see right in the story of Karbala, why action is imperatively linked to belief. The people of Kufa showed this to us. Not only did they proclaim that they believed in Imam Hussein as their leader, they specifically asked him to come and help them. Along his journey, though, the poet Farazdak warned our Imam. He said, their hearts are with you, but their swords are with Bani Umayyah. Their hearts were with Imam Hussein, but their actions spoke differently. So it's important that we learn to exercise our beliefs physically with our bodies, because then we'll be more prone to turn our hearts and have our actions be more sincere. When we exercise our belief in justice physically by standing in protest, voicing ourselves in a crowd that we won't stand for oppression, speaking at a podium, we are more likely to take the side of justice when our salvation is at stake. And it reminds me of the verse from the Wa'ik Mil that says, let my works be accepted by thee, O Lord, to such an extent that all my deeds and my habits become one sustained effort for you, and my entire being may receive eternity in thy service. It's a very beautiful verse if you think about it, subhanAllah. So the first step for this holistic approach to be developed is to have a love of God and the Ahlul Bayt in order to have a true commitment to them. When I think about the relationship between Sayyidah Zainab and Imam Hussein, I feel like I'm observing the way I like to say it is an adoration of her Imam. She absolutely adored her brother, even from childhood. Reports say that when she was a baby, no one could quell her crying sometimes, but if Imam Hussein held her, she would calm down and she would gaze at his face. So it's no wonder that she went to great lengths to make sure that she was the best supporter of Imam Hussein. When the caravan embarked for Hajj with suspicions that it may become a dangerous situation for all, Sayyidah Zainab still made sure to accompany Imam Hussein. And furthermore, while she was there, after all the men in battle had been killed, she physically saved the life of Imam Zain al-Abidin twice, once at Karbala when they pillaged the camp, and again in Kufa in the court of Ibn Ziyad. She put herself between the fourth Imam and his potential assassin because she knew what was at stake and she needed to preserve his life. So she was willing to put her life in danger by physically putting herself in front of a sword. We can only imagine how strong her faith was and how strong her conviction was to stand in the court of Yazid and testify against her brother's killer and tell him exactly what was on her mind. I know Sayyidah Zainab did not go into the battlefield, but her words cut like a sword against Yazid. Right before their release for 3 days, the women survivors of the massacre at Karbala wept and recounted the story of what happened to their loved ones. Other women who lived in Sham attended these first majalis, and it was through this initial network of women that Yazid's reign began to crumble because the truth began to spread. So the very compound where the conspiracy against Imam Hussein was born also held the traditions that ultimately brought down his rule. So what is this, if not activism? Or conversely, what is activism, if not an essential tenet of the Shia faith? Sayyidah Zainab, to me, is the personification of justice. She stood with the truth at all costs, unapologetic and unafraid. Her strength is inspiring for all of us and gives us different modes of resistance to ensure equitable treatment for all. She laid out, without a shadow of a doubt, how important it is to always protest oppression, wherever you see it, and in many different forms. So following her example, like I mentioned before, you can speak at a rally, even your presence at a rally, to change an unjust policy or demand an unjust ruler leave office, for example. It can in turn affect your heart and make sure your whole being is committed to instilling justice in this world. So we can also see from examples of those who have supported our imams during particularly dangerous times that they also used poetry as a form of protest. And in many countries of the world, including today, participation in majlis, holding a majlis, is a form of resistance against rulers who are trying to still eradicate the message of Hussein. But make no mistake about it, people have tried for generations to kill the message of the Ahlul Bayt. And they may have killed Imam Hussein physically, but thanks to Sayyidah Zainab bringing his memory to the masses, they will never ever wipe Husseiniyyat from this earth. In his court, Yazid was acting pompous and said that the very fact that he was able to kill Imam Hussein was indicative of Imam Hussein's loss. And Sayyidah Zainab bravely told him, "You will not be able to obliterate our name, for our message and our divine message cannot be destroyed." Indeed, it never has been and it never will be. Karbala and the aftermath in Kufa and Sham did not just have political and religious ramifications. There are transgressions that crossed humanitarian, moral, and ethical boundaries. But even after all these lines were crossed in Karbala, justice found the ultimate refuge in the words of Zainab in the court of Yazid. So just now, how I spoke about how we have to physically place ourselves, for example, at a protest for the sake of fighting for justice can turn our hearts, or doing certain actions during prayer are representative of certain stages of existence. The motions during a majlis are also representative. When we put our hands on our chest during Latmiya or Noha, it represents the horses trampling on the body of Imam Hussein. When tears go down our face, we're partaking in the same actions as Sayyidah Zainab and Imam Zainal Abidin did. There's a specific function of majlis that goes beyond remembrance and beyond turning of the heart, and it relates to the devotee's relationship to his or her current imam. So just imagine when we're sitting in a majlis, normally when we're able to go to the mosque, and you hear the cry of Imam Hussein from the minbar when he said, "Is there anyone there to help me? Hal min nasir yarsurna." And you think to yourself each time, how I wish I was there and I would stand in front of you before your feet even touch the hot soil of Karbala. But truly, this doesn't have to be just a wish. We actually do have that option, whether we realize it or not. When you remember the importance of Imam Hussein's companions being next to him, you can realize your own position in helping your own current imam. And if you look at it this way, Karbala is not a historical event that is frozen in time. It's a living narrative, and you are a part of it. We say Ya Hussein with our lips, but our hearts are saying Ya Mahdi. The way we wish we could have helped Imam Hussein can transcend into the way that we can help Imam Mahdi's return, inshallah. So do you realize that you have the power to call him back? Do you realize that if you work on yourself, being a better Muslim and being a fierce fighter for justice and truth, the way that Sayyidah Zainab was, they're inching closer to his return, and that you might be one of those who are helping him. We are so fortunate that as Shia Muslims, we not only know our Imam, but we have knowledge on how to bring back his return. It's a very powerful position to be in when you know that you have an active role to play in not only your own salvation, but in restoring justice on earth. So this can look different for different people, based on your talents, based on your abilities, but it is not an obligation to be taken lightly. It can be catered to your situation, but the more that we involve ourselves in both spiritual and social activism, the more that we will be bettering ourselves as a society. Now let's take this a step further and think about how our communities are set up. Now this may be a moot point right now since we're in a pandemic and all of our events are virtual, but let's think about how our masjids are set up. Are they accessible to everybody? Are women welcome into the prayer spaces? Are children allowed into the prayer spaces? If you're a father with young kids and your children are sick, have you ever thought to yourself to say to your wife, you stay home, or I'll stay home with the kids today. You go to Jummah prayer. You go to the majlis. You go and listen to the lecture peacefully and try to better yourself. When we become better partners for each other and our families become stronger, our communities become stronger. And it's really of utmost importance that everybody feels involved. Everybody feels that they are welcome into the mosque. The mosque belongs to everybody, whether you're 1 year old or 100 years old. And we have to really take that into consideration if we want to really do justice to our community. So since the title of my talk is both the life and death of Sayyidah Zainab, I'll talk about that for a minute. We have competing narratives on how Sayyidah Zainab died and even where she may have passed away. Some say she passed away of natural causes, and some say that she was killed because her continued stance against injustice was always a threat to the Caliph's influence. But regardless of what happened to her, it's my opinion, which is the topic of my research, that I believe Sayyidah Zainab died as a martyr because her entire life became one sustained jihad with her words, with her actions, and with her very being. And in Shia Islam, unlike other schools of thought, there is much more stress on the manner of life rather than the manner of death when talking about martyrdom. So with that, I will end my talk, and I pray that all of us find inspiration through this great woman to apply to our own lives to fight for justice daily, be a voice for the voiceless, and work tirelessly for the return of our Imam Wajil Faja. Salawat.
Thank you so much, Nasheen, for that amazing talk and the amazing reflection, which is so relevant to today. Now, I would like to present my next speaker, who is someone that I admire and someone I've known, and I've seen her talks, and I think she's fantastic. Her name is Amy Claire Nelson. Amira Amy Claire Nelson. She is a writer, an editor, an organizer, an educator, a documentarian, and an immersive content creator. She's a multi-hyphenate, so I feel like I'm out of breath just introducing her. She lives in Durham, North Carolina with her husband and her son. She received her master's in visual communications from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Her non-traditional thesis was on the Arba'in Walk, for which she produced a 360 documentary titled Arba'in Walk, an immersive love story. We're going to show you a 1-minute trailer of her 3-part documentary just now, and then we will have Amy present her talk, which will start with an interactive Arba'in map.
Brother, do you have the video? Are you playing it? Hey, assalamu alaikum. Hey, assalamu alaikum. I actually don't have the video up. I thought you guys were playing it on your, I can get it up now. So let me get it. And I will play it in just a second. No?
Yeah, it was.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Sister Maria. It's a pleasure to be here. I don't usually actually speak, so I'm a little bit out of my element with this. I feel more comfortable kind of behind the camera, but inshallah, I will share some of my reflections with you. And I'd like to just start by talking a little bit about the Arba'in Walk film and immersive map that I created, and then kind of launch into my talk from there. So I'd like to share the map, which I'm going to do now for everybody. And this is Can everybody see it? Okay. Assuming you can see it. Okay. So this is the Arbaeen Walk immersive map, and it's an interactive map that you can actually click on the little icons and get information. This is a co-created community project, and I put out a call. Me and kind of our team put out a call for submissions from all over. So videos, audio, reflections that we could then upload onto this map. And as you can see, you know, this is a picture that someone submitted of some people on the Arbaeen Walk holding a demonstration of free Kashmir. And there's, you know, a mix of images and video. So please take a look at the map and explore it on your own. And if you have something to submit to it, you can go down to this little introductory heart right here, which will introduce you to the project. And at the end, you can see where you can submit, which is right here, url.com/submitaw on the map. Because ultimately, the impressions that we bring away from Arbaeen Walk is a collection, it's a collective of many people's experience all together. And I feel like the more experiences that we have on this map, the more angles that we have of this one event, then the closer we can get to kind of actually being there and feeling what it's like, and maybe deriving some meaning from it and understanding what it's all about, inshallah. So again, this is kind of the introduction. This tells you a little bit about the walk. This tells you a little bit about the distance in the car. And then here, where you see video, is where you can access my full 360 documentary series, Arbaeen Walk, an immersive love story. So I hope you'll visit it, inshallah. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. All right. So Maria twisted my arm and got me on this program. And so I had to pull together some thoughts really quick, kind of at the last minute. And I thought for me, because I'm not a scholar and because a lot of how I understand things is very much through experience and through kind of doing things, kind of like the sister was mentioning, doing things full body, mind, everything. And so I am an experiential learner, I guess you can say that. And so for me, when I went on Arbaeen for the first time in 2012, really kind of just blown away by it because it was such a fully, like full immersive sensory, you know, experience on just so many levels. The impressions that you bring away from it, you know, are just kind of like too numerous to talk about, and also difficult to talk about, because I find that really in the English vernacular, it's really difficult to find the words to describe the experience. And so I set out, as Sister Maria mentioned, you know, as part of my thesis for my master's degree at UNC, was to document the Arbaeen Walk in 2017 as a 360 experience. And so for those of you who don't know what 360 is or what a 360 camera looks like, this is what it looks like. It's kind of, this is a very consumer model. It's kind of cheap, but it's one that you can get yourself for like $60 if you ever want to experiment. It's 2 fisheye lenses. And so what you get is you get, like, after you've shot something with a camera like this, you get kind of 2 images, right? That you then have to stitch together to create a full spherical, full spherical experience. So basically I decided on this instead of like traditional audio or video, because I felt that the Arbaeen Walk itself as an event was something that was just kind of too big to just capture with audio alone, or just photos alone, or just, you know, traditional video alone. So when I learned about VR, I was like, this is it. This is the medium I'm going to use. And I was also like, why haven't we heard about like Arbaeen? Like 25 to 30 million people. Like, what? I was just like, I've got to do something. So that's what I decided to do. So 360 storytelling, when you're capturing video and audio in a spatialized way, is very different than traditional storytelling methods, because it's very impressionistic. It places the viewer inside of the story. It's as close as really you can bring someone to being there. Like, it's the closest you can get without being there. And that's what I was looking for. It also gives a lot of control to the user. So in that they are in an experience, whether they're looking at it on their phone or in headset, they choose where they're going to look. You might choose the clip that you're going to include in a scene. You're going to choose the shot, but they're going to choose within that shot where they're going to look. So it's really different in that way as well. You give a lot of agency to the learner or the viewer. So one of the questions that I asked on the Arba'in walk a lot to many of the pilgrims and like fellow visitors, Zareen, was what do the events of Karbala, this walk in particular, mean to you in the world today? And you can watch my series to kind of hear a lot about people's different impressions on there. There are so many beautiful testimonies, and anyway, so I hope you'll go check it out. So I thought that I might just share some of my observations of Arba'in at this point of the walk in and of itself, and my impressions of it as an experience. So it kind of goes back to what Sister Nosheen was talking about. I'll talk about it in a minute, but I see that Arba'in walk is like a classroom or a school. I'm just going to use that analogy for me. This is how I see. I obviously don't, I'm not a scholar, so I'm just kind of giving you kind of my own experiential learning mode of how I experience things. So I see Arba'in walk like as a classroom or a school where students are practicing for something very big. They're employing all of their limbs, their arms, their hands, their legs, their mouths, their ears and their eyes in service to one another. It's an experiential school. It's not a school solely dedicated to book study alone. At the same time, in all of this activity, there are moments of rest and reflection and prayer for the soul, the mind, and the heart. So it appears to be a whole body, whole mind, whole heart endeavor, you know, the Arba'in walk. And when we look at the Ziyarat of Arba'in, there's a section in it where, you know, it goes over the goals of Imam Hussein alayhi salam in his uprising. And it says he was met with deadly dangers, acted justly and fairly, made use of everything belonging to him to pay full attention, to give sincere advice, took pains, made every effort, and put his heart, mind, and soul and life at the disposal of thy mission, your mission, to liberate the people from the yoke of ignorance and the evil of bewilderment. So I think this is, you know, you start to see the parallel, kind of like you see almost like Ziyarat in action on the Arba'in walk. And it feels like a socio-political and spiritual incubator where we individually and also collectively synthesize and orient all aspects of ourselves, body, mind, and spirit in the same direction. And so that's what we see kind of in the visible realm. But there's also an otherworldly quality to the Arba'in walk that many, many people talk about. And if you've read Kamal al-Ziyarat, which I did before I went on Ziyarat of Arba'in in 2012, it's a collection of over 800 traditions, the majority of which, I think it's something like 70% of the traditions are on Imam Hussein's Ziyarat alone. So, you know, if you've read that and you remember that there's these amazing hadiths about the constant flow of visitors and hosts above, in, and around Karbala, including prophets and angels and martyrs and jinn, like there's this whole other dimension going on at the same time that you're there. And if you understand and believe in the chapter of Al-Baqarah in verse 154, where it says, do not say about those who are slain in the way of Allah that they are dead. Nay, they are alive, but you do not perceive it. I would say that this ziyarat is the closest you're going to get to perceiving it. It's, you know, that unseen kind of like the energy, I don't know, I know that word is overused, but the feeling that you get, I don't know, I feel like that's the closest maybe that you can get as lay people to getting close to this other realm and feeling a sense of this gathering of martyrs. So when we understand that we're mixing and moving amongst very powerful unseen beings on this ziyarat, You know, Kamala Ziyarat is the best thing you can probably do for yourself to really understand the cosmic, larger than life and timeless consequences of the martyrdom of Imam Hussein and his companions in Karbala, and to really prepare yourself for what you're about to enter when you go to Karbala. So during Arba'in, you sense, like, again, these echoes or reverberations of the Sabikun who run ahead. You're witness to it around you physically, like with all the people who are serving and doing and helping and that. And then you're also, again, you know, kind of in touch, or you're in the presence of the martyrs and the hosts and visitors, kind of all working towards serving and helping each other. And this is why so many people say, like, that they feel like they're in heaven, right? When they go to, this is why I think people say that. Because, you know, and a lot of people like that I interviewed said this in so many words again and again, that I feel like I'm floating. I feel like I'm in heaven. I feel like I'm in another world. And so what I ask myself is, if I have tasted that, what am I supposed to take away from that? Why is Allah letting me feel this? You know, what next? And I think maybe the answer is probably very personal for every person. But for me, being in like that kind of proximity to the martyrs and to all of these unseen entities and movements is like a testament, number one, to the other realm. So it definitely for me solidifies, like, there are multiple dimensions going on in existence here and in general. And it gives us a taste of the life that we can have in this world and what we can build in this world. And then also in the next world, where we may, hopefully, if we did everything to our utmost here, that we may rest and reside in the next world. So it's giving us a taste of where we hope we'll end up eventually, which is in the neighborhood of, you know, Allah's most beloved ones. So for me, maybe it's something to experience so that I will be motivated to go higher and to push myself further and to reach for more within myself, to be more fearless, and to know that in that striving, you know, there are helpers to help you, that you're not alone, and that the cause of justice and the dignity of the human being is at stake and extremely paramount in this mission. So this idea of fighting for justice and love go hand in hand, you know, and it's really got to start with love. It's really got to start with a profound understanding of the human being. And, you know, I think, well, I'll get to it in a minute, but just Allah's wish for us, you know. On a personal level, it's a motivation to better myself in relation to my loved ones, and also to attune, like I said, to the preciousness and the potential of the human being. And when I think about that, like when I think about, you know, possibly how we're seen as a human being, as a creation, I'm really in awe and struck by Allah's mercy and his sending down of the prophet to us, because to me, the sending of Prophet Muhammad to us as a final messenger is really like the testament to how much Allah, how much love he has for everyone, and especially for his prophet, which makes you in turn love Allah and the prophet. And then you see this great gift that can only be gifted out of love. So if we understand, and I'm not claiming to understand, I'm trying to understand, if we can begin to try to understand how much Allah loves us, then we realize that Allah wants the best for all of his creation. And this leads us to attuning to the plight of all human beings. And we become concerned, and we hopefully strive to become more merciful towards the human being and wanting the best for them. So in the case of oppressors, we want to do what we can to stop them from oppressing, for their own sake, and also for the sake of those that they are oppressing, because they are not living in Tawheed when they're doing that. So they're going against Allah. And in the case of the oppressed, we want to help them, and we want to stop those that are oppressing, including ourselves. So when we make the vow in the ziyarat, when we read the ziyarat of Imam Hussein or ziyarat of Arba'in, this dichotomy between truth and falsehood is made very, very clear. When we recount the story of Karbala, it's like you can't get it wrong. Like there's no metaphor or anything like that. Very, very straightforward. And so in the ziyada, we're basically making an oath that we're never going to be on the side of hypocrites or the oppressors, and then we'll always stand for haqq, and that we're always going to strive to mold ourselves according to the teachings of the Prophet and the Imams. So this is very, to me, this is a very, very heavy thing. It's a very serious thing when we're making a vow like that. It's not just like salams and visitation, but you're actually making a vow to seek out and stand on the side of haqq in all circumstances, right? In all your personal circumstances. And you know best what those circumstances are going to be, because we're all going to be presented with different circumstances. And to distance yourself from batil and the side of the oppressors out here in the world, but also in ourselves. So that means a constant self-exploration about where you stand in relation to others and the treatment of others. So, you know, for me, it's like constantly checking in. Am I striving to follow the path of the Prophet in relation to, you know, myself, the people around me, others, to God? Or are we coming up with our program and going by that program? The events of Karbala make haqq and batil very clear. And so there's no allegory in the metaphor. And really, when we're questioned, we're not going to have, I see it as serious because like there is no better example than that. So we won't really have any excuses. Like, I think maybe we'll have, I don't know how Allah's going to treat us in the next world, but it's kind of like, you know, you've been given this lens, right? This barometer by which you can judge in your own experience and in your own behavior, what is right and wrong, and what is truth and falsehood. And so, yeah, just a comment on that. And then I'll just kind of finish it up with a reflection that I had on Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam, her comment about, I see nothing but beauty. And I think it's like a question that many people always have, because we see it on our level, which was like, this was gross, you know, this was like this terrible, how can you even see this as beauty? And I think of this as I think that this is like, because of what Imam Hussein did, he was executing a divine mission, and it was carried out to perfection. And Sayyida Zainab's brother, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, carried out the will of Allah perfectly. His obedience to Allah was perfect. His upholding the religion of his grandfather, the Prophet Muhammad, was perfect. And all expected obedience that Yazid was never able to extract from Hussein for himself. That is like the ultimate slap in Yazid's face. So then there was his family and companions, also in perfect sync with their Imam and his movement, all of them operating in complete submission to Allah, walking in the footsteps of their beloved Prophet and under the direction and guidance of their living Imam. So not only did Imam Hussein obey his real master Allah and follow the way of his grandfather to most perfect degree, he also had his support mechanism around him, also ready to sacrifice whatever it would take for the mission. So they didn't turn back. They didn't become cowards. They did not come up with their own plans. They maintained their dignity. They became as one body, with the divine order. At the same time, the martyrdom for us, like I said before, was a travesty. And the people of Kufa turned against haqq because they were afraid. They took the path of cowards. Yazid's army went far beyond the parameters of battle or any sort of code of battle and just outright became leaders. They killed the most beautiful group of human beings, the most beloved grandson of one of the most beloved grandsons of our Prophet, who was standing for truth and for pure Islam. And so this is who we want to strive to be for our living Imam. We want to be that perfect servant, plugging right into the haqq and to the mission, and to be in harmony with the divine will and not in discord with it. So that's all I have to say. May Allah, help us all on our path towards self-perfection and joining in the mission of our Imam of the time, inshallah. Salawat.
Thank you so much, Amy, for that amazing reflection. I want to thank both Nausheen and Amy today for educating us and teaching us things that we don't always reflect upon or don't always see it from that lens. So as you all know, if you are following the talk or even if you catch the recording, there's a link that should appear on the screen. It's a Slido link. It's very simple. You just type slido.com and you put in the code 62393. The code again is 62393. It's just automatically generated. And you can submit your questions for Amy and Nosheen if you have any questions. The link should be on the screen. If it's not on the screen, it's actually very simple. Again, Slido, SLIDO.com, and the code is 62393. All right, so thank you again to both speakers. This was absolutely fantastic. I have a few questions that people have submitted, and I'm just going to jump right into it. So the first question is for Nosheen. The question is, Salam Nosheen, excellent talk. You mentioned that Lady Zainab alayhi salam was unapologetic. What is your advice for those who feel that compromise is the way to build coalition?
Excuse me, just wanted to get that shade off of my face. That is a very good question. And I think the route towards activism is different for everybody. You know, you obviously don't want to put yourself in a position where you feel like you're compromising your religious beliefs, because there is not space for that. But I'm going to take a guess as to what this means. I think a lot of times people in activist spaces may feel uncomfortable because there are individuals who identify a certain way or believe a certain thing that does not align with Islam. In my opinion, it may not be a hurdle necessarily to accomplishing a greater goal. Of course, we should always check with the scholars that we feel comfortable with to make sure that we are not cutting corners in ways that we're not supposed to. But you know, there's a lot more room in Islam than we like to think, as far as what people are as individuals and where like our identity lies. Let me just give an example. You know, when the Muslim ban happened, the people who were flocking to airports to try to help people from being deported or detained or whatever, when they had just landing from this country, you know, or landing to this country when they were like in flight when all this stuff happened, you know, they weren't all Muslim. There were a lot of non-Muslim people, some people who, you know, maybe didn't believe in God or, you know, what have you. That doesn't mean that we couldn't come together to work towards that greater goal. You know, that itself should not be a hurdle towards trying to make sure that certain people were not, you know, being detained unjustly. So I think it's definitely like, you know, some place that we have to be a little bit careful about. But you know, if you're not compromising on your own belief, and I think if you are very respectful, you could also make it clear that there's certain things that you may not agree with, but you know, we are here to do this job together.
Thank you so much for that reflection and the answer. My next question is for Amy. It's actually a comment and then it's a question. So the comment is, you said that Imam Hussein alayhi salam was faced with deadly dangers and his mission was to liberate the people. Thank you so much for that reflection, since we're 2 days away from Arba'in. The question is, Assalamu alaikum, Sister Amy. The Arba'in walk was separate for me than what I saw in the Rosas. So I guess what the person is trying to say is that the walk itself was very different than what they've actually seen in the shrines. The bad behavior within led me to judge people. Is that fair? Thank you.
Hey, I love this question. Thank you so much for asking it. Because I think it's deep, you know. I think it's fair, but I think that you should ask yourself, for me, if I have that, if I'm in, that had the same thought, by the way. I felt myself get irritated one time when I was approaching Mazari, and I was like, I think when you have that thought, you should correct yourself and you should think about how you've pushed other people. That's what I think you should do. Because I think that everyone's overcome with love. Everyone's going to do what they're going to do, but you don't want to waste your energy on like anger and like making, this is like a once in a lifetime experience. Like you're in the presence of your mom. So like, I would just advise, like, I don't know if it's fair or not fair, but I think you want to try to contain your energy and keep it directed towards that visit, and just try to breathe through it. You know, I know that in Karbala, they're trying to make it more organized and orderly so it's safer for everybody. But I think in this moment, I think that's, for me, I think that's what the Imam would want from me, is to pay attention to my own actions and like, how am I behaving in the moment? You can't really be responsible for other people, and you don't know what they're going through. You don't know, you know, but I think you should just do your best to think about that. Think about how you've pushed other people or something like that.
Thank you so much for that answer. That's a really good point, because we do feel frustrated based on behavior of others. But like you said, it's not about, I mean, obviously we're humans and we do get impacted by other people's behavior, but the goal is to keep our focus. So I just have one more question for Nausheen and one more question for Amy, and then we'll wrap up, inshallah. So the question for Nausheen is, Salam, Sister Nausheen, great talk. As a mother, how do you impart Sayyida Zainab's message to both your sons and your daughter?
So that's a really nice question. Actually, my children are named after the children of Imam Ali and Sayyida Fatima Zahra. Their names are Hussein, Zainab, and Abbas. And you know, I do encourage them to always advocate for each other, to look out for each other, and just try to have that sibling closeness that we learn about when we learn about the family of the Prophet. I do encourage them to speak out if they see somebody being treated unfairly, if they, you know, see someone who's, for example, being left out or something. My kids are very young, so a lot of those lessons are yet to be taught, I think. But I mean, 2020 has given us the gift of having to have these very difficult conversations if we haven't taught our children those things yet. You know, we've had to talk about racism. We've had to talk about, you know, fighting for equality and equal rights, things like that. So that, of course, leans more towards like the American justice system and so forth. But you know, I tell them all the time that these are the people that you are named after. Every Muharram has given us the opportunity to talk about that, and to talk about why it's so important to stand up for what you believe, and that you know, we have to say that you have to do it safely, but no matter what the cost, it's very important to always speak the truth, to stand up for what is right. You know, I think that Karbala gives us and Sayyidah Zainab in particular, gives us so many opportunities to talk about a lot of very difficult things, but in a way where we could say, you know, we have this example that was given to us. We have this role model who was given to us, and she endured all that. And a lot of times I say that, like, they went through this difficulty so that you don't have to. You know, they stood up and they saved Islam and preserved Islam so that you have this gift of having Islam as a whole. So, you know, I hope that as they get older in every stage of life that they're at, that I can, you know, present this to them in a more developmentally appropriate way. But I certainly never plan to stop giving them examples from Bibi Zainab's life.
Thank you so much for that answer. I would like to point out that both of our speakers are mothers, and I cannot thank them enough to not only teach us the wisdom that they're teaching, but also they use their own examples to show us that we can do anything. And I think it's a huge shout out to all the mothers out there. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you guys immeasurable amounts of happiness. Okay, so one last question for Amy. The question says, Assalamu alaikum, Sister Amy. What was the climax of your experience on the Arba'in walk? What would you recommend for a Zaire who wants to take the same journey in the future?
I don't really know. That's hard to say, like, what the climax was. Because I think the impressions that you take away kind of all come together to kind of form that final image or experience or lesson for you. So I don't know, for me, I think it's the Arba'in walk is like, I talk about this in documentary a little bit. I feel like it is when they say it's the journey of love and it's the walk of love. I really think about all of the people all of the prophets and the Matsum who came before us and the sacrifices that they made and how they, you know, distanced themselves from kind of like the ease of this world. Like they kind of, you know, they use their entire existence towards the service of Allah, you know? So I don't know, I just see Arba'in as like a practice for us to get closer to that and to practice ourselves and to really pay homage to the ones who gave so much, and that it's a legacy that we have been honored with to keep alive, you know? And that it's exciting. It's very exciting. So I just think it's like very exciting and motivating. And I don't know what the climax experience was. It's very serious. It's very serious. It's very exciting. It's profound, and it changes you, because once you make that vow kind of in person in Karbala, there's really no going back, and you can't be flaky anymore. Like, there's no room for flakiness, you know? So I don't know, that's one piece. What I would recommend again is the book Kamala Ziyarat. Like, I can just tell you what I got. Like, I read that book and it changed my life, like in terms of how I see Karbala, how I see my mom, and how I see really the almost like the effect and the cosmos that his martyrdom had, which is so much. It's so huge. Like, it's so, I don't know how to say it, like the words are escaping me, but it's just, it really illuminates, I think, the consequence and the effect and the reality of martyrdom and the events of Karbala. And I think if you acquaint yourself with it through those traditions, you're going to be better attuned or better prepared for what you're going to experience in Karbala. You shouldn't just like, I like to research everything before I like go into things. So for me, it's kind of like it lays the foundation. So you have a context and you have like reference points as you're moving into this, which are going to illuminate the space for you more, I think, and illuminate the lessons for you and your experience and what you're going to encounter. and just go with an open, you know, when you go somewhere for the first time, you know, when you walk through the woods and you can take a hike or a run through the woods with your earphones on, listening to music or whatever you're listening to, or you walk chatting with a friend. You can go by yourself, maybe amongst other walkers, and you, for the first time on this hike, on the first time on this path, and you're listening in nature, you're listening carefully to everything that's going on around you. You're looking carefully at everything that's going on around you. You should go with that same sensitivity, that same care, and that same all ears open, all eyes open, mind, so that you can be in a receptive state when you go.
Thank you so much for that answer. It was, it's fantastic just to think about everything that you said. I want to thank both our speakers today, Nosheen Yusuf Sadek and Amy Claire Nelson. They were both exceptional today, and I hope and pray whoever is watching this, even if you catch the recording, you learned something from it. Okay, so we are going to conclude our program, but before we do, I do want to tell you all about Mateen Talks. This program was presented by Mateen Talks. Some of you may have heard of it. Some of you may not have heard of it. It's that's what it's called, Mateen Talks, M-A-T-I-N Talks. And that's on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I want to just quickly tell you about the upcoming talks. Because of COVID-19, it won't take place in person, but you could actually participate from your homes. I am so fortunate to work with these group of people to just contribute the little that I contribute. And I'm so fortunate to do today's event with them because I've never met more organized and humble people in my life, alhamdulillah. So once again, Mateen Talks, it's a platform that gives everyone, in particular youth and students, the opportunity to present their creativity and ideas and address pertinent issues in our society, obviously by keeping the principles of Islam, you know, in mind. So the Mateen Talks national format, I just want to quickly go over that. It's usually held during the MSA-PSG conference that takes place in December. But this year, due to COVID-19, it will be a virtual event along with the conference. So you can check out the conference online and you can also participate and you could check out Mateen Talks. The applications are open till October 18th. So it's coming up. Today's October 2nd. So it's October 18th is the deadline. Check out the website for more information. The website is mateentalks.com. That is pretty much the same name for everything. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, website, mateentalks.com. Round 1 participants present to a panel of judges only. Those selected move on to round 2 the following night, and then round 2 is on a larger stage in front of a broader audience. This time around, it'll be virtual. And then the panel of judges are the ones who decide who the winner is. The cash prizes of winners of round 2, the first place is $1,000. The second place is $500 and the third place is $250. So before I go, I want to tell you how Mateen Talks started. It started as an initiative of MSA-PSG to give Muslims a platform to talk about ideas that they are passionate about. As means to engage with their community, we want Muslims to have a platform to speak on, talk about issues that are relevant to them. And then the speaking competition has given many an opportunity to stand on stage and speak to the world. When I attended MSA-PSG last year, I saw some amazing topics. I saw someone present opioid addiction among the Muslim community. I saw someone talked about the socio-political climate in our country. I saw someone, a very young presenter actually discuss about the importance of Islamic schools. And that's a topic very near and dear to my heart because I am a graduate of an Islamic school. And their slogan is share the light, and it's so appropriate. So just check out Mateen Talks, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, website, and check out our upcoming programs, and please participate. Sign up. The deadline is October 18th. I want to thank you all, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our sins. I know Arba'in is coming up in a few days. I believe it's in 6 days. Thank you so much.
Oh فراقی چه فراقی چه فراقی بگیر از دلم یه سراغی چه فراقی چه فراقی دوری و دوستی سرم نمیشه و هیچ کجا واسم حرم نمیشه و از تو دورم باورم نمیشه و دارم میمیرم کربلا واسم ضروری حسین اربعین اوضاع چجوری حسین کار من امسال صبوری حسین دارم میمیرم من ایرانم و تو عراقی چه فراقی چه فراقی جوونیم فدا سر ساقی چه فراقی چه فراقی آرزوم رایی مشایشم کربلاییشم باهات همسایشم هر جمع سرخه بشه آسایشم آروم جونم این روزا عطره عقاقیم میخوام تلخی چای عراقیم میخوام گریه تو صحنه ساقیم میخوام آروم جونم دارم من ایرانم و تو عراقی چه فراقی چه فراقی بگیر از دلم یه سراغی چه فراقی چه فراقی دوری و دوستی سرم نمیشه و هیچ کجا واسم حرم نمیشه و از تو دورم باورم نمیشه و دارم میمیرم کربلا واسم ضروری حسین اربعین اوضاع چجوری حسین کار من امسال صبوری حسین دارم میمیرم آروم جونم من ایرانم و تو عراقی چه فراقی چه فراقی من هرم لازمم دلم تنگم روزگارم ببین به هم خورده تو راه